This is Whisper from History, where forgotten voices rise again. If you missed our 32-episode Season 1, Dark History, watch the full playlist on our channel. What if a journey of just 3 hours took 37 years instead? In 1955, a passenger flight took off, but soon vanished into thin air. No radar could trace it. No airport ever received it. And then 37 years later, the same plane reappeared, as if time had stood still. Where had it been all those years, and how did it return? Tonight, we uncover the chilling mystery of the plane that disappeared into the sky. Stay with us till the end, because this is a story you won't forget. It began, like any other morning, in Caracas, Venezuela. The date was July 2nd, 1955. Humid, bright, and heavy, with the noise of aircraft engines rolling across the tarmac of Simon Bolivar International Airport. Passengers of Pan American Airways Flight 914, bound for Miami, Florida, boarded the DC-4 aircraft just after 9 a.m. It was a routine flight, 3 crew members, 57 passengers, and a sky clear enough to promise a smooth journey over the Caribbean. At 9:55 a.m., the engines roared to life. The silver aircraft taxied forward, lifted gracefully, and disappeared into the blue. But within minutes, that blue sky would become the backdrop to one of the strangest aviation mysteries ever told. By 10:15 a.m., air traffic control in Caracas lost contact. The blip representing Flight 914 vanished from radar. No distress call, no static, nothing, just silence. At first, controllers assumed a brief technical glitch, but when repeated attempts to reach the crew failed, an emergency search was launched across the projected flight path. For the next 72 hours, Coast Guard and military aircraft scoured the Caribbean. No wreckage, no oil slick, no floating debris. It was as though the plane had simply slipped out of existence after several weeks. Officials had no choice but to declare Pan Am Flight 914. Lost families were informed, death certificates were issued, and the world moved on. But what really happened to Flight 914? For decades, no one could answer that question until something impossible happened. Fast forward to May 21st, 1992. It was a quiet morning at Caracas Control Tower, the same airport where Flight 914 had once departed. Controllers were monitoring routine arrivals when a sudden, unfamiliar signal appeared on the radar, a small, slow-moving object entering Venezuelan airspace from the south. At first, they assumed it was a private charter, but as it approached, the details grew unusual. The aircraft transponder wasn't transmitting a modern identification code. Its beacon frequency was obsolete, something used decades ago. And then through the haze, a controller spotted it, visually. A four-engine propeller plane, silver fuselage, Pan American Airways markings. But Pan Am hadn't flown that livery since the early 1960s. One of the controllers, Juan de la Corte, leaned forward and whispered, "This can't be real. That's an old DC-4. When the aircraft circled for landing clearance, the tower received a radio transmission that froze the entire room. Caracas Tower, this is Pan American Airways Flight 914. We are en route from New York to Miami. Estimated arrival 9:55 a.m. The date, the voice, the calm professional tone, all matched a flight that should have been in the air 37 years ago. The controller hesitated, unsure if this was a prank, a reenactment, or something worse. He radioed back carefully. "Pan Am 914, please confirm your location and flight origin. Over." A brief pause, then the reply. "We took off from New York at 9 a.m. this morning. Our passengers are getting anxious. Can you confirm Miami weather?" The tower exchanged stunned looks. New York, 1955. The controller checked the flight manifest archives, half expecting to see a ghost. And there it was, Pan Am Flight 914 DC-4. Tail number N37955, last recorded July 2nd, 1955. The signal on the radar was real, the aircraft was real, and it was requesting to land. When the DC-24 touched down, its landing gear screeched against the tarmac, an old metal sound from another era. Ground crew approached cautiously. The aircraft's exterior looked aged as though it had been sitting in a hangar for decades, but the engines hummed with modern vitality. The captain's window slid open. A man in a crisp uniform leaned out, his face pale, eyes wide in disbelief. Where are we?" he asked. The ground officer replied, "You're in Caracas, Venezuela, sir." The captain frowned. "Venezuela? But we should be over Miami by now. What kind of trick is this?" Authorities rushed to the scene. The pilot, identified as Captain Reginald Wilson, refused to leave the cockpit. He reportedly clutched a small calendar, the date clearly marked July 2nd, 1955. Airport security surrounded the aircraft, unsure if this was a hijacking, a Cold War experiment, or something entirely different. Passengers could be seen peering through the windows, frightened, confused. Some were crying, others praying. When officials approached the aircraft door, the captain shouted, "Stay back, we're leaving." And before anyone could react, the engines revved, the plane lurched forward, and within seconds, Pan Am 914 was airborne again. It disappeared into the clouds, heading north. Radar tracked it briefly, and then, once again, it was gone, just gone. News of the incident leaked through local radio and a small Venezuelan newspaper, but by the next morning military officials had sealed all reports. Witness statements were confiscated, and air traffic recordings mysteriously vanished. Still, rumors spread like wildfire. A plane from 1955 had reappeared in 1992 for only a few minutes and then vanished again. But was it really possible? Skeptics dismissed the story almost immediately. They pointed out inconsistencies. Pan Am Flight 914 was originally bound from New York to Miami, not Caracas. The timeline of communications didn't match official radar records, and no verified flight transcripts were ever released. Historians began digging deeper. Was there ever a Pan Am 914 in the first place? The Civil Aeronautics Board records from 1955 listed dozens of Pan Am flights, but no official record of Flight 914 being lost. Yet strange anomalies appeared in scattered archives. Internal Pan Am maintenance sheets mentioning the DC-4 with tail number N37955, last serviced June 1955. And that's where things got even stranger. In the late 1980s, before the supposed 1992 event, a tabloid magazine called Weekly World News had published an almost identical story, complete with photos of the same aircraft, the same pilot's name, and the same time travel twist. Skeptics concluded that the 1992 Caracas story was just a recycled urban legend, but something didn't add up. How did the magazine, decades earlier, have access to aircraft registry numbers that weren't publicly available until much later? And if it was fiction, why did eyewitnesses at Caracas Airport later claim they saw an unidentified vintage plane land that morning, one that matched the Pan Am 914 description perfectly? One former mechanic recalled, "I saw it with my own eyes. The paint was old. The logo was from the 50s, but it looked brand new. Then it was gone." Investigators pieced together possible explanations. Theory 1. Misidentification. Perhaps a vintage aircraft had been restored and mistakenly believed to be the missing flight. But experts countered the registration number N37955 hadn't been reassigned since 1955. Theory 2. Fabrication. Maybe the story was entirely invented, a blend of Cold War paranoia and tabloid fantasy. Yet the radar anomaly logs from May 1992 at Caracas Tower, though incomplete, showed an unregistered aircraft appearing for several minutes before vanishing from radar. Theory 3. Temporal displacement. This was the most controversial theory, that Flight 914 somehow entered a time distortion, a rift between moments, only to emerge decades later in the same airspace. Ridiculous to scientists, but haunting to those who heard the pilot's radio voice. Physicist Dr. Alan Harper, who studied atmospheric anomalies over the Caribbean, once remarked, "The region has long been linked to magnetic distortions. Pilots have reported compass failures for decades. If a rare electromagnetic event occurred, it could theoretically affect radio signals, but to move a plane through time? That's beyond current science." Still, for those who believed the event represented a tear in reality itself, a plane swallowed by time, returning decades later, unchanged, unaware, trapped between two worlds. But there was one more disturbing detail that resurfaced years later. In 1999, during airport expansion work near Caracas, construction crews unearthed a small metallic plate buried beneath the old control tower foundation. It was corroded, but the engraved text was still visible. Property of Pan American Airways, DC-4, N37955. The discovery was quietly logged, never made public. Some say it was planted, others, proof that something extraordinary happened there. When asked, one retired controller simply said, "I can't explain what I saw, but I know that plane wasn't supposed to exist." So, what truly became of Pan Am Flight 914? Every official record denies it ever vanished. Every historian dismisses the idea of a plane jumping through time. And yet, there are pieces that don't fit. The outdated beacon frequency that appeared on radar, the transcribed voice matching 1950s pilot diction, and the tail number found decades later beneath a Venezuelan runway. Coincidences? Or remnants of a story buried too deep to prove? Perhaps the truth lies not in supernatural theories, but in the nature of human memory, how stories evolve, how fear and fascination intertwine. Maybe Flight 914 never left 1955. Maybe it never existed at all. But the legend, that strange, persistent whisper about a plane that crossed through time, refuses to fade. Because some mysteries are less about what happened, and more about why we can't let them go. And somewhere in the skies, between New York, Miami, and Caracas, there remains, at least in the imagination, a silver DC-4 gliding quietly through an endless morning, forever trying to land in a world that no longer remembers it. Maybe Flight 914 never returned at all, or maybe it's still wandering somewhere in the skies, or perhaps it vanished into a parallel world. But whatever the truth may be, one question still remains: where is this flight? If you have a theory or thought about this mystery, share it below in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so you can explore more unsolved paranormal events with Whisper from History.